chapter in our discussion of economic history is public sector undertaking. Now, discussion on economic history of India is incomplete without discussing the role that public sector undertaking has played and what is the way forward for public sector undertaking. So let's look at the index first and then we will go to the discussion. Please write down index. What are the topics that we are going to discuss in this chapter? What factor influenced expansion of PSUs? So here we will see that what was the reason because of which India decided or our policy maker decided that public sector undertaking will play larger role in India. So what was the reason? What factors were present or what was the situation which demanded expansion of public sector undertaking? What were the objectives of PSUs? Now, if you need to evaluate PSU, if you need to evaluate how they have performed, whether they have performed poorly or whether they have performed adequately, you need to know their objective. Without understanding the objective with which PSUs were established, you will not be able to do unbiased evaluation of the PSU. So before evaluating PSU, we will look at the objectives and then we will evaluate whether PSUs have achieved their objective or they have not achieved their objective. Achievements of PSU. So here we will see how far they have achieved their objective. Now PSUs are justified on various grounds. So we will see that how far this criticism is justified against PSU. On what areas you can criticize and on what area criticism of PSU is not justified. Impact of economic reforms. How economic reforms have impacted PSUs or performance of PSU or working of PSU. Debate between privatization and no privatization. And last we will see changing role of PSUs. Okay. Let me know once you have written the index. So what is the changing role of PSU looking forward from 1991 onwards? Let me know once you have written it. No problem. Okay. Please tell me what are the factors because of which our policy makers decided that state is going to play dominant role once India become independent. I have already discussed it couple of times that what factors compelled our policy maker to decide that state is going to play dominant role. Can you please recall some of the point and tell me what are those points? Just think about the situation in 1947, land, labor, infrastructure. Can you please elaborate on that, Namrata? I'm talking about broader point. Let me give you one example. Maybe it will be clear to you. One example is we have seen exploitative nature of capitalism and colonialism. Okay, we have seen Great Depression of 1929 and we have seen exploitative nature of colonialism. Character of Can you think of any other external factor which influenced our policymaker to go for expansion of public sector undertaking? Can you think of any external factor which influenced them to make sure that state plays dominant role? Give me one external factor and one internal factor. See, I have given you one external and internal factor. Internal factor was we suffered because of colonialism and capitalism is external factor. We have seen Great Depression of 1929. So can you give me some one external and one internal factor? Just think about it. We have done in the chapter of planning and also we have done in the chapter of industrial policy. Okay, risk aversion. So why there is risk aversion? Okay, let me tell you. Can you recall rise of Soviet Union? They followed planned model of economic development and PSUs were the growth engine. Can you recall rise of Soviet Union point? How after I have discussed after Russian Revolution, Soviet Union had increased the production by choosing to become a socialist economy where state will play a dominant role, and by expanding the scope of PSUs they were able to rapidly industrialize their country. Can you recall it now? Okay. Another point is underdeveloped economic reality. We were an underdeveloped economy. So from being one of the hub for global trade and from being one of the largest market for global trade before 1757, British rule resulted in 200 years of underdevelopment of India. So because of underdevelopment, it was seen that the state has to play dominant role, because until and unless state play dominant role, they cannot lift up Indian economy. So in order to lift up Indian economy, it is necessary that state play dominant role. So these were the basic things that guided our policy makers. So as a result, what they decided because of this factor is that state is going to play dominant role, and since industry was chosen as the prime moving force, so they have to do the business. State have to do the business or state have to establish industries. So when state is going to do the business, how they will do? They will establish public sector undertakings. PSUs. Okay, government company. I have told you public sector undertakings are different from public limited companies. Don't confuse it with public limited company. Okay, public limited company is that company which is listed company or which is listed on any stock exchange. So public limited company is completely a separate concept. Public sector undertaking means government company. Okay. A company can be both public sector undertaking as well as public limited company. Just take the example of State Bank of India. State Bank of India is a PSU and it is listed, so it is also public limited company. Public limited company is any company that is listed. Okay, and this is any company which is a government company, that is greater than 50% share is held by government. So please don't confuse yourself between public limited company and public sector undertaking. Okay, so this is the story that fine, we are in 1947 and PSUs are going to play a dominant role. So let's see what was the factor that was present in India, or what was the condition, what was the demand of the Indian economy at that time, because of which it was decided that PSUs has to play a dominant role, or India will go for, or Indian policymakers will go for expansion of PSUs. This reality gave birth to the concept of PSU in India. So what factors or why emphasis was given on PSUs? Please write down these points: infrastructure need, industrial need, employment generation, profit motive and development of social sector, closed economy, rise of private sector. Let me know once you have written these points. Can I start the discussion? Okay. Now first is infrastructure need. Whether you take example of power, whether you take transport or you take communication. Now, any economy need some basic infrastructure. It doesn't matter whether you want to grow via agriculture sector, industrial sector or service sector. Whichever sector you opt for, basic infrastructure is something which every economy requires. Now, India was an underdeveloped economy. Obviously, users do not have enough money to pay for it. Still, if you travel in railway, our price that we pay for traveling is compensated, and you will see in tickets they usually write it is 57 or 67% of the operating cost is covered by railway. So point is, your economy needs certain infrastructure because there is negligible presence of this infrastructure, and without this infrastructure no economy can grow. Your economy will remain stagnant. Forget, you cannot even push growth in agriculture sector without this infrastructure. Now, this is a kind of public good. Private sector will not be willing to come and build a road and let you operate it for free. Today we see that flyovers are built, so there are user charges. If you are going to use that particular flyover, if it is made under PPP model, you have to pay certain amount of money to use that flyover. But at that time, India was a very poor country. People do not have money to pay for using that infrastructure. So as a result, it can only be the government who can provide this infrastructure. On one hand, it is a public good. On the other hand, people do not have the capacity to pay. So when they do not have the capacity to pay, private sector will never come and step in. So no matter how much demand, how much willingness is there is no capacity. So as a result, there is no demand. If private sector will look at the infrastructure need of the country, they will say yes, willingness is there. People want infrastructure, but they do not have capacity to pay. So I am not going to build that infrastructure. So as a result, government has to step in, and if government is going to step in, it is going to be public sector undertaking. Now another thing was industrial need. We have seen in the planning that before planning also in evaluation of Indian economy, that industry was chosen as the prime moving force. And one of the reason for choosing industry as the prime moving force was to remove regional disparity. Now with those kind of objective, plus to industrialize a country in which all four factors of production are bottlenecks, whether it was land, labor, it was capital or entrepreneur, and you have chosen industry as the prime moving force. So obviously the first responsibility or the first task of industrialization will fall on the government. Only then it can be shifted to public sector, private sector. So initial task or initial responsibility has to be taken by the government, because factors are not conducive for private sector to come and expand. Usually what happens is, if you look at any economy, okay, how do they attract capital or how do they grow? Initially, public sector or government has to make investment, and government has to make sure that the economy grows. Once public sector expands, or once public sector start operating in a particular sector, then what happens is that private sector is willing to join in. Okay, so when I am saying private sector is willing to join in, then what will happen? Suppose in case of public sector, if there is a company like SAIL, so now private sector, if government goes for disinvestment, then private sector willing to invest money in this company, or private sector may come up and establish, say, Tata Steel or Jindal Steel, like this. Okay. Then once private sector establishes their business and they expand their business, then foreign investors will be willing to come and invest in those private sector, or then they will be willing to come and invest in manufacturing activity or industrial activity into your country. You cannot expect that without boost to public and private sector, foreign investor will come. This is the sequence which every economy has to follow. First step has to be taken by the government. When government gives confidence after operating in industrial sector for 3-4 decades, then only private sector increases or expand their production, because private sector get the confidence after evaluating performance of public sector. Once private sector establish themselves, then foreign people or foreign investors get confidence in your economy, and then they will be willing to come and invest into your economy. So that's how this sequence follows. So because we have the industrial need and because we know this sequence, obviously it has to be public sector undertaking that is going to take the first step. Is this 2 point clear to you? Okay. Now next is employment generation. Now they tried to solve various problem of regarding employment generation with this establishment of public sector undertaking. Now first thing is poverty. The best tool to solve poverty is give them job. If you will give them job, then what will happen? You don't have to run any scheme for these people. They will start earning money, and once they start earning money, they will be self-sufficient. So one of the best way for poverty alleviation is give them employment. Now obviously private sector will not give employment, or they are not going to follow the reservation policy because they are there for profit motive. This can be done only by the public sector undertaking. Now another thing that they tried to solve with this was caste problem. Now don't think from the 2017 perspective. Think from 1947 perspective. India was agrarian economy, and in agrarian economy, employment is done on the basis of land ownership. Either you are the owner of the land, then you will cultivate it, or someone has to hire you to cultivate their land. So as a result, employment was very rigid, or based on the rigidity of caste system, right? Because of your caste, you may not be allowed to work in the agriculture sector. So in order to solve this problem, or in order to attack this problem of caste system, it was envisioned that if PSUs will be established in the backward region, then those people who cannot work in agriculture sector, at least they can come and work in this PSUs. And it is only government who can give them reservations so that these people get source of employment or source of income. Okay? Is it clear? Now another point is profit motive. Suppose only 100 students in India want to study Indian economy. Okay, only 100 students. Now there is two options. Either I can teach this 100 student, I representing private sector, or government can teach this 100 student. Now if I am teaching 100 student and making profit of 10,000, then either this profit can be made by me, or this profit can be made by government, right? Either of us can do it, or both of us can do it. So what government thought is that, this is just an example, obviously government is not willing to teach you. What government thought is, cement, bricks, fertilizer, chemical, there are so many things that people need. There is a demand. So why not government should produce? If government will produce, then the profit that will accrue from that business operation will belong to government. So as a result, this money which will accrue to government will ultimately belong to the public of India or people of India. So government thought that if by doing business we can earn more income beside receiving taxes, why not do the business also? So if private sector is doing the business, if I am going to do this business, this 10,000 will belong to me. But if government, this 10,000 will belong to all the people of the economy. So government thought that if private sector will produce, then there will be wealth accumulation and rise in inequality. So let not private sector produce, let me be the producer of good. If I will produce the good, the money that will be accumulated by me will belong to the people. Second thing is, I may charge fees of 1,000 rupees, but what government can do, government being not having profit objective, they may charge you 500 for the same course. So similarly, they may charge you less price for the same commodity. Private sector may charge higher price because they have a profit motive, but government, since they do not have any profit or commercial motive, they have social objective, they may charge less price. So two things they try to tackle by becoming the producer. First, they will corner the profit. Second, they will make the good available at a cheaper price. So that's why I've written the point, profit motive and development of social sector. That is producing or making goods available to people at a subsidized price. Is it clear? Okay. Now another point is closed economy. Now since Indian economy was a closed economy, you don't have access to capital, you don't have access to technology, and you want self-sufficient, or if you want import substitution. So how can you achieve this self-sufficiency? So one of the objectives that we will see after this topic is that objective of the PSU was self-sufficient. That let the government come and invest in R&D, and let the government give a strong foothold to the economy. So because India opted for closed economy, chances, see, it may happen that domestic private sector may not pick up immediately, but there were foreign investors who were willing to come and do business in India, but we closed our door. So as a result, if you want to become self-sufficient but you do not have any external support and internal capability is not there, so it is the government that has to come and step in. So because of this, it was PSUs who have made sure that India becomes self-reliant in various capital goods. I hope you remember what is capital goods. That is those goods which help in producing other goods. Okay. Now next is rise of private sector. Now India was democracy, and our policy makers, in fact, if you have studied polity, or if you will study polity, you will see there word socialist in the preamble was added by Indira Gandhi after 42nd Amendment. But this, despite the fact that our policy makers had a socialist leaning, most of the policy makers from Nehru to Gandhi, they had socialist leaning, but they never included the word socialist in the constitution because they do not want to restrict India, or they do not want to impose their idea of economic policy on the people of India, because they thought that with the time India may change. The objective may change from socialism to capitalism, or greater intervention by the state to market economy. So as a result, socialism was never imposed by the policy makers or framers of our constitution. Yes, India was state controlled to a greater extent in initial years, but that was for a certain time period. That was not the long term vision. They did not have the vision to make India a socialist or a communist economy. Their long-term objective was rise of private sector. But how will this be possible? If we see that flow of capital structure from public to private to foreign, then obviously first investment has to be done by public sector. So in order to make sure that private sector grows, and in order to make sure that private sector has support, public sector has to take the first step. When public sector take the first step, then only private sector will grow. So for long-term growth or rise in private sector, public sector has to take the initiative, and once the sector matures, government can stop doing the business and let the private sector expand in that area. So in order to fulfill the long-term vision of rise in private sector, it was necessary that public sector take the first step. Okay? All the points clear? Why emphasis was given on PSUs? See, once we will discuss emphasis, why, see, we have discussed why emphasis has been given. Now when we will discuss objectives, then you will, then it will be very easy for you to justify or look at the criticism with a different angle. Okay? Let's take a 2 minutes break.